Everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to talk about Cobra Kai, and this will be a review of the season premiere of the third season. This episode was titled Aftermath, and we focus now on the show, which has been very hugely successful and well received amongst both critics and audiences since it debuted on the YouTube Premium Red service back in 2018, and it has now migrated over to Netflix, of which the third season began on January the 1st, 2021. As I'm sure now you all know, that Cobra Kai is a continuation of the famous Karate Kid movie franchise, and you can check out my reviews of the previous two seasons on this channel. I'll provide links for those both in the description, and there'll also be links at the end of this video. This review will contain spoilers of the first episode only, and I will do a season review overall, but I won't release that until the end of the month. I know a lot of people will binge watch this series and probably get through it probably within the first day that it's released, but I like to do these reviews steadily, so I'll review the premiere episode now, and then if there are any other standout episodes in between, I will review those as well, and then I'll provide a finale episode at the end of this month, and that will shortly be followed by a season review overall. So keep a lookout for all of those within the channel. I still also feel that they should have done this by a weekly release, because that lengthens the topic of discussion for these shows and it keeps it trending for a lot longer, but that's discussion for another day. But we primarily focus on what happened between this episode. So once again, I advise you, if you haven't seen the previous two seasons of the show, I advise you to stop watching now, go away, catch up with all the episodes, and then come back to this review. So we begin with the fallout of that epic school battle that we saw at the end of season 2, and we deal with all the characters as they come to terms with what happened, and they have to adjust to all of the repercussions and implications following the events within the school battle of last year. And we pick up at the beginning of the episode where we see those events being reported amongst many news reporting on the violent karate clash, and we see many reactions from parents of the recent events. We see Miguel in hospital having dreams about his former fights within the first tournament. As we all know, he ended up in a coma from the fight, and at this current stage is no clearer as to when he will recover from his injuries. We catch up with Johnny, who, as we saw at the end of the season 2 finale, has finally gone off the rails. He's gone back to the booze, and we see him in the bar being drunk again as he watches the news reports on the school fight, and he gets into a fight when some people change the channel, and then shortly after he gets arrested. He's all bruised up, and this is the typical character trait, I think, for this personality, is that when things go wrong, he refers back to the booze and he goes back to his old ways. And I think this is harking back, I think, to the beginning of the first season, where once again we will go on a redemptive arc, I think, for the character and also for the people in and around him as well. And I think William Zabka continues to produce a high quality performance. We see Daniel and Amanda are feeling the reactions of other parents. We see early scenes where we have that parent rally as they debate what to do about karate. They are literally now outlawing karate now, and Daniel sticks up for himself, saying that karate helped him out when he was being bullied, and then some people shout at him. They say that he was the bully and that he was responsible for these events. So both Daniel and Amanda are really concerned about how the effects are going to affect their name and both their brand as a business, as they remark on the fact that the car business has not been faring too well since the events of the previous semester. So that's a lot of issues that they've got to deal with their own, and we'll see further up throughout the season whether it causes further factions between their own marriage, because that's an area that we covered halfway through the second season as well. We later learn that Robbie has gone on the run and has stolen one of their cars. Amanda wants to report it in, but Daniel rejects this as it will land Robbie further in trouble. And despite the fact that Daniel's very angry about Robbie, about what happened when Sam got drunk at the party, I think he still believes in Robbie. They built a very good bond and connection between the two characters in season 1, and I think Daniel sees that Robbie deep down is a good kid and he wants to make sure that he doesn't get himself in further trouble. Going back to the school, we learn that Tori has now been expelled for instigating the events of the brawl. We also learn that Aisha has been moved to a private school following what happened, but this coincides with what we knew already months earlier, that the actress who played Aisha had departed the show. So I think that was a very good, brisk way just to explain her absence. It makes complete sense why she moved away following the event. So it means that we don't have to spend any more asking about where Aisha is and wondering what she's up to. So I like the fact that they dealt with that issue very swiftly and very quickly, and we can all just move on. We see earlier signs that the heated rivalry between Eli and Eugene will continue throughout this season, and there's a bit of a role reversal now, because Eli initially, through his orc identity, was the one who got all the girls and was the cool kid on the block, but following the revelations by Eugene that he used to wet the bed when he was younger, we see that Hawk goes up to some girls, try to chat them up, but they laugh at him because of his bedwetting, and we get hints that it may be Eugene now who will get more attention of the girls, and he seems very surprised by that. And I love like little moments between the two, and I think they're going to do a very good job of building the dynamic between Hawk and Eugene, as Eugene perhaps may go on to be the more cooler kid, and now it will be Hawk who will be more of the typical thug and a bully. And of course, seeds of this were already sown earlier on throughout season 2, so that's a very interesting dynamic that will be very good to see how they play that out throughout this 3rd season. We also catch up with Sam, and we learn that she was suspended for a couple of weeks following what happened. And when she initially tries to go back into the school, she struggles a lot, because every time she walks up the staircase, she gets flashbacks to what happened, particularly when Miguel was falling. So she really struggles to settle back in. Other students are looking at her and giving her bad looks. And we also get a touching scene later on when Daniel goes back to the Miyagi dojo and he sees Sam sitting there, and he has a very heartfelt chat with her, telling her that she can't run away from her problems, she's got to take them head on. Daniel realises that he's got to do the same as well, and then later on we see that Sam, she goes back to the school, and then other students are still giving her bad looks, and then she confronts them as well. So I think in many ways there's an irony here, because it might make Sam stronger going through this experience. It might give her a bit more steel and a bit more passion and aggression about her. Now, over the course of the season, it will be interesting to see how much of that hardened interior within her character spills over. Will she eventually go more into a similar character and personality than what Tori will do? And that'll be interesting to see when her and Tori eventually clash together again. How will that dynamic play out as well? Will it intensify the rivalry even more? So very interesting to see what will happen there as well. We also get some hilarious scenes when Johnny tries to infiltrate the hospital to see Miguel. He does this first by trying to disguise himself as a doctor, and that doesn't really work, because when he's in the toilets, one of the other medical staff, they look at him and they see all the bruises on his face, clearly determining that he's not a doctor. So Johnny tries the secondary tactic, which is to inflict injuries on himself. He bangs his head against the wall and it's bleeding, so of course this means he has to go and see a doctor. Again, some great scenes where he's showing bruises from his earlier fights, and you see the nurses, their reactions, they're very shocked, and they realise that he has to stay in hospital a lot longer. It's very hilarious again. Great performance again from William Sabka. And then we get a very good scene when Johnny goes to see Miguel in the hospital, and he tries to give a rousing speech, tries to encourage him to try and wake up again. And once again, I think the relationship between Johnny and Miguel, which I've mentioned in previous reviews, is a key element to this entire series, and that's something they're going to go back to as we see Miguel going back to his road of recovery, and we know that Johnny will help him through that process. So very important, the key relationship between Johnny and Miguel again on here. We also get a fantastic scene between Daniel and Kreese, who of course now has assumed full control of the Cobra Kai dojo, as what we saw at the season finale. And we get a bit of back and forth between them, and I love it when Kreese quotes the line, "There's no such thing as a bad student." This carries extra weight because, of course, if you know the experiences from the first movie, this is the line that what Miyagi says to Daniel when they first start training together, and that line really hits home because it makes Daniel realise that yes, both he and Johnny, they were the ones responsible for the fates of their students, and the fact that yes, they maybe led them on the wrong path. So that comes even more of a hardened truth when it comes from Kreese. And I love the back and forth, and there's an interesting play on the philosophies, because again, it could be argued that to an extent, maybe Kreese's philosophy was correct, because if Miguel had not been so merciful towards Robbie, he wouldn't have dropped his guard and then wouldn't have been kicked down the stairs and then inflicted his injury. So I love that little play between the philosophies, and once again it shows that Kreese is going to be a very impactful villain throughout this entire season. This is again another great example of how the show refers to the past and makes it relate to the present and current events. We get the further development when Daniel meets up with Johnny and they begin the search for Robbie, and then Daniel really hints to Johnny that they're going to have to start working together. We kind of saw this already within the trailers, so this is again the beginning of the building blocks between the two. It will start with the search for Robbie, and then we'll probably see a strong bond between the two, and really I think we'll get an interesting dynamic when we will see that Daniel will help in the rehabilitation and the redemption of Johnny, and I'm sure eventually they will form forces together to take on Kreese. So just a very interesting development. And then we end the episode where we see Miguel waking up. Good to see that they get that out of the way in the first episode, because then we can then push on events with Miguel's road to recovery and his building a relationship with Johnny, and then we can progress further on with the story. So overall, I thought this was a very good episode. Less action and less dynamic, but of course it had to be, because when you have such impactful events of the second season finale, then you can't just jump back to the original status quo of the first season. You have to deal with these events, and particularly when you're dealing with a television series, you have to deal with it steadily, because then it carries more weight and it gives the characters a lot more layers and depth as we see them reacting towards different situations. So I like that. So despite the fact this had a much more somber and maybe with a much more slow paced turn, I think it's completely necessary in terms of the storytelling, and that was the right decision to take. And of course now that we've had much more of a reflection of what happened in the past, we can now press on with future events throughout the season. So I really liked this premiere. I thought it was great, and all credit to all the actors and the storytellers involved. It gets me further excited for where they will take this season throughout the 10 episodes. So I think it's a very promising start to this new season. So as I mentioned before, I will of course watch the episodes. As doing this video, I'm currently on episode 5 right now, so I'll probably get to the end of the season within the next day or two, and then I will do an overall season. But as I mentioned at the start of this video, I will not upload the season review until the end of this month. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings towards the first episode of the new brand third season of Cobra Kai, which has recently debuted on Netflix. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think it's a promising start towards the season? Does it get you excited for the rest of the following episodes? How far are you already? I'm pretty sure everybody watching it right now, because it's on New Year's Day, you've probably binge watched through most of the episodes, so I imagine you're probably close to the end, if not the end of the season already. How do you feel it compares to the previous 2 seasons? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's worse? And are you excited further on for a season 4? And do you think the series can continue maybe beyond the season 4 and a season 5 as well? So those are my thoughts on Cobra Kai. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons and help me grow this channel in the future, so I can continue to produce high quality content. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.